The draft board just went live with 32 names that could reshape the entire NFC North power dynamic for the next decade. And the player sitting at pick 17 wears maize and blue from Alabama, while the name at 25 carries burnt orange from Texas Tech. Two selections that tell completely different stories about how championship contenders and hungry challengers are attacking roster construction in completely opposite ways. Welcome back to Bears News Fan Report, your ultimate destination for comprehensive Chicago Bears coverage, breaking news, draft analysis, and everything you need to stay completely connected with our beloved franchise as we build toward sustainable championship contention. I'm bringing you critical intel today about how the 2026 NFL draft landscape is shaping up right now, how the decisions made by 16 teams ahead of us will fundamentally determine what kind of talent drops to Chicago's selection and what type of player profile Bears management is targeting to complement the young core we're building around Caleb Williams and this emerging offense. The implications of what I'm about to break down extend far beyond just one draft pick, because understanding how the entire first round flows gives us insight into organizational philosophy, positional value in today's NFL, and exactly where the Bears stand competitively compared to the teams we need to beat to reach the playoffs. Let me take you inside the draft philosophy that's dominating team strategy across the NFL right now, because understanding these broader trends is absolutely essential for grasping why certain players are going where they're projected to go and what that means for Chicago's draft position. The 2026 draft class is being dominated by two clear priorities that are driving decision-making at the very top: quarterback desperation and trench warfare. Teams at the top of the draft are either swinging for franchise quarterbacks who can transform their entire organization, or they're building foundation pieces in the trenches that allow existing quarterbacks to operate at maximum efficiency. That split tells you everything about how the modern NFL operates, with front offices recognizing that you either have the most important position solved, or you're constantly searching for the answer while simultaneously trying to build infrastructure that gives any quarterback a fighting chance. The very top of this projected draft perfectly illustrates that dynamic, with the New York Jets making an aggressive trade up to the number 1 overall selection to secure quarterback Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. The Jets are a franchise that's been searching for quarterback stability for what feels like decades, cycling through veteran reclamation projects and mid-round developmental picks without ever finding that foundational answer who can elevate everyone around him. Mendoza represents exactly the profile modern teams are seeking: elite poise under pressure, accuracy to all levels of the field, command of offensive structure that suggests he can run complex NFL schemes immediately, and the intangible leadership qualities that make teammates believe. For the Jets to trade significant capital to jump to the top spot tells you how desperate they are to finally solve that position, and honestly, I don't blame them, because watching quarterback dysfunction destroy talented rosters year after year is the most frustrating experience in football. Las Vegas follows immediately with quarterback Dante Moore from Oregon at number 2, continuing the quarterback run and showing that Pete Carroll isn't interested in waiting around for developmental projects or veteran stopgaps. Moore brings clean mechanics, legitimate NFL arm talent, and that ceiling that gets general managers excited about building an offense around his skill set for the next 15 years. Tennessee at 3 pivots to defense, selecting linebacker Arvil Reese from Ohio State after addressing quarterback in the previous draft cycle. Reese is a tone setter, the kind of player who dictates tempo in the middle of the field with sideline-to-sideline range and brings legitimate leadership that elevates defensive performance across the board. That pick represents Tennessee saying they're confident in their quarterback situation, and now they're fortifying the defense to become a complete team. The next stretch of picks shows teams attacking different positional priorities based on their specific roster needs. Cleveland takes wide receiver Carnell Tate from Ohio State at 4, adding a polished physical receiver who wins with strength and body control regardless of who's throwing him the football. The Giants trade up to 5 for wide receiver Jordan Tyson from Arizona State, landing a dynamic playmaker with elite separation skills. Then we hit the trenches with Arizona taking offensive tackle Spencer Fano from Utah at 6, and New Orleans grabbing offensive tackle Francis Mauigoa from Miami at 7. Those back-to-back offensive line selections show teams recognizing that you can't run any offense effectively without protecting your quarterback and creating running lanes, fundamentals that never go out of style, regardless of what offensive scheme is currently fashionable around the league. Washington, Cincinnati, and Miami all attack the edge rusher position between picks 8 and 13, grabbing Reuben Bain Jr. from Miami, David Bailey from Texas Tech, and Keldrick Falk from Auburn, respectively. That concentration of edge defenders reflects the premium the NFL places on generating consistent quarterback pressure, recognizing that no defensive scheme works effectively if you can't collapse pockets and force quarterbacks off their spots. The Rams make an interesting selection at 10, taking safety Caleb Downs from Ohio State, a player projected by many as the best pure talent in this entire draft class. Downs is the do-everything safety who can play in the box, cover the slot, and erase mistakes on the back end. Exactly the kind of versatile chess piece that modern defensive coordinators dream about deploying. Kansas City does what Kansas City always does at 11, adding weapons for Patrick Mahomes by selecting running back Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame. Love brings explosive burst, elite vision, and receiving ability out of the backfield that makes him a true difference maker who can attack defenses in multiple ways. That pick reminds everyone that even when you have the best quarterback in football, you never stop adding talent around him, because championship windows don't stay open forever, and you maximize every opportunity while you have elite quarterback play. The next several picks continue building rosters with cornerbacks, edge rushers, and defensive tackles going to Minnesota, Carolina, Dallas, Baltimore, and Houston as teams shore up defensive units that need playmakers capable of competing against the elite offensive talent proliferating throughout the conference. Now here's where things get extremely interesting for us Bears fans, because we need to understand exactly what happens at pick 17 before we can fully appreciate what's available when Chicago is on the clock 8 selections later. The Detroit Lions are divisional rivals who've been to 2 straight NFC championship games and established themselves as one of the most physically dominant teams in football. Select offensive tackle Caden Proctor from Alabama. Proctor is massive, battle-tested from playing in the SEC against elite competition week after week, and fits perfectly into Detroit's identity as a team that wins games by imposing their physical will on opponents through dominant line play. The Lions recognize that their championship window with their current core is wide open right now, and they're not taking any chances with offensive line depth or quality because protecting Jared Goff and creating rushing lanes is what makes their entire offensive system function at the level that's gotten them so close to Super Bowl appearances. That Lions selection at 17 is significant for multiple reasons that directly impact how we should think about the Bears' draft strategy. First, it shows that our division rivals are prioritizing offensive line excellence even when they're already one of the best units in football at that position group, which means they're planning for long-term sustainability rather than just patching holes for one more year. Second, it demonstrates that elite offensive tackle prospects are going earlier than some projections suggested, which impacts positional value throughout the rest of the first round. Third, it reinforces that Detroit is operating from a position of strength where they can draft best available talent, rather than reaching for immediate needs, which is exactly where championship contenders operate, while teams still building their foundations have to be more strategic about addressing specific roster deficiencies. The picks between 17 and 25 continue shaping the board, with the Jets adding wide receiver Makai Lemon from USC at 18 after landing their quarterback earlier, Tampa Bay taking tight end Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon at 19, and Pittsburgh grabbing wide receiver Denzel Boston from Washington at 20. Those selections show teams continuing to add offensive weapons, while defensive players go to Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas again via Green Bay's pick, and Buffalo taking cornerbacks and defensive linemen to shore up their defensive units. Each selection that comes off the board changes the calculus for every team behind them, creating scenarios where certain positions see runs that push different talent down the board or create positional scarcity that forces reaches. And now we arrive at the Chicago Bears at pick 25, where the projection has us selecting edge rusher Romello Height from Texas Tech. Height brings length and upside off the edge, giving Chicago another developmental pass rusher to pair with our existing defensive front. This is a player who profiles as someone with excellent athletic tools, the kind of physical traits that can't be taught but can be refined through NFL coaching and strength programs. Height isn't necessarily a day one starter who's going to rack up 12 sacks immediately, but he's the type of prospect who could develop into a legitimate difference maker over his first 2 seasons as he adds strength, refines his technique, and learns to translate his athletic ability into consistent pass rush production. From a strategic perspective, this selection makes a ton of sense for where the Bears are as an organization. We've invested heavily in the offense through the draft and free agency, building around Caleb Williams with weapons and protection that give him every opportunity to develop into the franchise quarterback we believe he can become. The defense needs continued investment, particularly at positions that impact winning at the highest level, and edge rusher remains one of those premium spots where you can never have too much quality depth. Height gives us another young piece to develop alongside the defensive talent we're accumulating, creating competition in practice that elevates everyone's game, and providing options for defensive coordinator to deploy based on matchups and game situations. The beauty of selecting at 25 is that we're no longer in a position where we're desperately reaching for immediate impact players at positions of dire need. We've done enough roster building over the past 2 years that we can start thinking about best available talent within positional priorities rather than forcing reaches because we have gaping holes that must be filled immediately. Height represents that kind of strategic selection, where we're adding to a position group that could use another quality piece while not passing on a player just because he's not starting Week 1. As Bears fans, we should be encouraged that our organization is in position to make these kinds of calculated developmental selections rather than reaching for immediate needs, because that's exactly how sustainable contenders are built in today's NFL. Make sure you subscribe to Bears News Fan Report if you haven't already, and smash that notification bell so you never miss critical draft updates as we get closer to April. Share this video with fellow Bears fans because understanding how the draft board could shake out is essential for appreciating the strategic decisions our front office will face. I'll be back with more comprehensive draft coverage and roster analysis as we move through the offseason. Until then, bear down. And let's trust that Ryan Poles and this front office continue making smart decisions that keep building toward championship. Contention.